Greetings, YouTube. I've mentioned many times in the past that I am recovering from depression and anxiety. I've got depression really under good control. I don't think I can ever say I'll be completely free of it, but at the moment, it really isn't holding sway over my life the way it used to. And my anxiety is getting smaller and being put into a much more well understood perspective and understanding than it used to be. I'm beginning to see how it fits in my life and how it has altered me, surprisingly, not always for the worse. But along with those things, I have begun to tackle my own body image. And my body image has not always been good. That will probably come as a surprise. But as well as being depressed and anxious, my own body image has been affected by the people and the society around me, by the patriarchy, by like the bro culture, about movies and television and fictional depictions of males. And all these things have been internalized by me, as they've probably been internalized by everyone watching this video. There are a few of us that are lucky enough to be enlightened enough to be free of these images, and I applaud and respect anyone who is. But as I come to grips with them, and I begin to see myself in a new light, because now at 165 pounds and in relatively decent condition and 50, I am different than the person I was 20 years ago when I was 230 pounds and very, very unhappy and very, very, very anxious, and with a much worse image of myself. And as I begin to tackle that, I've also begun to see the world around me, because that's one of the wonderful things about my anxiety becoming smaller and better understood, that I can finally see the world around me and see the individuals. That instead of everyone else just being kind of a shadow, obscured by my anxiety, I am beginning to see people as individuals, see them for the first time in many ways. And that involves accepting them for who they are. One of the things I've been tackling has been fat acceptance. Now, I'm not using the word fat as a pejorative or a derogatory term. I'm using it as a descriptor. Thin, fat, states of body shape, that's it. And I saw something recently, I think it was on Tumblr, where someone was talking about the fact that their personal feminism that they practice included fat positivity. I thought about that for like a week. And I realized that I can't have fat positivity. I can have fat acceptance. I can look at a person and accept them for who they are. And I know that sounds arrogant, but you have to work with me here. This is a new concept for me. And I can accept them for who they are without judgment. I am not going to tell them you should lose weight. But having a weight over a certain limit is not healthy, just as having a weight under a certain limit is not healthy. And I'm not going to shame someone. I'm not going to point a finger. If it comes up in conversation and someone asks me, how did you lose weight? I'll tell them. If someone asks me for my opinion about their weight, I would tell them. But I would do it out of a sense of compassion and friendship. I would not do it as a means of condemnation. But I can no more have fat positivity than I can have anorexic positivity. I see both these as being unhealthy states of being. And I know that's probably going to sound harsh, and I apologize, because it isn't meant to sound harsh. I know what it's like to be ostracized for your weight. And I know what it's like to now have the ability to compare my current state of physical being with my old state of physical being. And being 165 pounds is a whole heck of a lot better than being 230. And I know people who are far heavier than 230, that are in the 300, 350 range. That's not good for you. I've got Knees that aren't great. My right one's worse than my left. I've had them since I was like 15 or 16, so this is nothing new. I think it's like I believe my doctor told me I have calcium deposits in the back of them, which is kind of thing they can go in and scrape it off, or eventually they just replace them. That may be something I have to worry about at some point in the future. But losing 65 pounds, almost 5 stone. I actually was down to 160 at one point. That was cool. My goal is 155. It's been a long road. Now the pain is much, much less. I mean, I probably have a bad knee pain day once a month, once every 6 weeks. Whereas at 230, it was an almost everyday thing. Where Lara could literally reach over, put her hand on my knee, and feel the heat and the pain inside my leg. The joint was not functioning right. That doesn't happen much anymore, which is good. I didn't enjoy it. So I know what it's like to make that change. I know how hard it is. Now for me, if I had made the change all at once, if my doctor, when I was diagnosed with diabetes, had said, okay, this is what you have to do, and I had made the entire shift from the way I had been eating and living into my new way of eating and living, it would have been easier for me. One abrupt, boom, done. But that's me. But unfortunately, my doctor did it in stages. So I literally went through a grieving process 4 times. When if I had just gone from one to the other, yes, the grieving process would have probably been deeper. But it would have only been once. But everybody's different. Some people would much rather go through it even more gradually than I did. And that's okay, that's fine. That's why we have professionals like dietitians and doctors. And I have one of each. A dietitian and a doctor. Though I only see my dietitian once a year. And mostly she goes, "You're doing fine!" At least the last 3 sessions I've seen her. And my last doctor, I said I was her most compliant diabetic patient. She actually wanted me to speak to diabetic patients, but I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want to hear me say, yes, you have to live an incredibly strict and sparse life most of the time. They're not going to want to hear that. You know, I wouldn't want to have heard it at my worst. And I'm getting better. I can accept people for who they are without judgment. I slip. I'm human. But it's becoming easier. But I can't have fat positivity. I can't wrap my head around that. And I'll be honest, there are a lot of times I don't find people over a certain size attractive. And that's my issue. It's not theirs. But then again, I'm not really in the market either. So, you know, it isn't much of a handicap at this point for me to not find certain people attractive. But this has been a hard journey of beginning to see people for who and what they are. And being able to see the person inside that body more than the body they carry. Because I realized for a long time, I felt that the world saw me as my shape and as the person inside that shape. And it sucked. And I don't want to do that to other people. Because it wasn't right when it happened to me. And it isn't right for anybody else to do it to another person. So, I'd like to talk about body image. How's yours? Would you like to change it? Are you happy with it? Do you think a person can have fat positivity? Do you think it's healthy? Unhealthy? Are you comfortable with fat acceptance? Thin acceptance? How do you think society handles these things? These are questions I want to know. These are important things because we all deal with this stuff every day. Because many of us are not necessarily the ideal that society keeps telling us we should be, which of course is bullshit. You are who you are. You do you. And if you can be happy doing it, you're winning. If someone else says you're not being happy in the right way, well, That's what you can tell them. We can all get better and be happier, be more centered, be more compassionate and kind to each other. But sometimes there is a limit to what I can accept and what I do think is positive. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that sometimes knowing where the boundaries are for you is important. Knowing your boundaries is important. There's an old saying, before you tear a fence down, know why it was built. And I think about that a lot before I tear down certain boundaries. I want to know what's on the other side. I want to know why it's there. I've discovered some of those fences are bull. I've learned that some of the fences aren't. Occasionally the hard way. So, tell me, what do you think?